the painting part. I'm not going to use anything fancy. You see some of the brushes that might look unfamiliar on the left. That's just the Photoshop brushes I tried bringing in to mess around, but the only one I used is, as you see, the selected one here, which is just an adjusted brush from Painter. If you grab one of the soft brushes or hard brushes, I've made this one all the way hard, and it has a like pen pressure on opacity and the size of it, and that's pretty much all I've done. I've just saved it as a different preset because it got annoying changing it each and every time. But that's all it is. You have the brush if you have Substance Painter. Another thing I've changed in kind of the default settings of Painter is that I am color picking the material with Q. So I just went into the shortcuts and changed the kind of color picker to be Q. It does pick up the material, so if you had all channels selected, it will pick up all the roughness and normals and everything, and that can kind of mess up if you're painting like that. But in this case, I'm only using the color, so well, by picking the material, I'm only picking the color. I'm just going to start going around and kind of with big broad strokes and smaller strokes, just kind of add details where I want and a bit of definition of small surface planar changes. And you saw me set up the mirror plane, which is all right for this, but not 100% because you see my model is a bit wonky, so it's not mirrored. And later on I'll start seeing that me painting on one side while did paint on the other side, it messed up a few places. Still got me further because I don't want to paint, all four sides individually straight away. I want to do sort of a rough paint block-in without kind of repeating myself or repeating the process in too many areas. So yeah, you saw I wanted to paint on that front face as well, but since it's mirrored, I don't want that to be mirrored. I don't want that planar to be mirrored like that. So I'm just going to paint on this one side, and then I'm going to change the mirror axis, paint on the other plane. And by the end, I'll be turning off the mirroring altogether. That's more or less how it's going to be throughout the whole thing. I'm just going to paint. So I have different goals in mind in each step. So with the rough paint, yeah, again, just plugging in more of the details, making it a bit more unique in places, some form definitions, little shapes here and there, making it unique on each side. See, like by adding a bit of like strips where I feel it belongs. I want to kind of pick and adjust the colors from time to time as well, as in not just use the color picker all the time, because if you do that, you're kind of just painting monochrome at some point. So I just want to add those little subtle color hue shifts wherever I can to make it more interesting. With this side being kind of roughly blocked in, I'm going to change the mirror plane to the right one, and then I can work on this whole side. So as weird as it is to have a picture of pork as kind of your reference always hanging there, it's still invaluable just to see how, like the gradients, how the different layers meet together. I feel that's, even though I'm making it stylized, that's what's gonna make it sell still, because I want to use those real world details and translate them into some simplified version in a way. By the end of this, I'll be adding quite small details, and you definitely don't have to. When I'm approaching these, it's I'm always thinking how am I defining, kind of whatever this thing is. So it and it's details is never the answer to be, if I add more details, that's going to make it look more like what it is. No, you can omit a lot of the details and still have it look exactly kind of what you want it to look. So if I want this to look, it already looks like a pork. If it's some background element in a scene, this is enough painting, call it done and move on. So obviously it depends what you're using it for, what do you want the final result to be. And when it comes to stylized work, it's really the very, very hard part of it is how to make it simple yet represent the asset, the object of what it is. At least in my approaches on these, I'm not a big fan of hyper realism. So it's good to know what goes on to achieve hyperrealism, but I want it simplified. And surprisingly, that's not easy to achieve, because you have to, in a way, do less to make it still look what it is. Basically, if you are painting, you wanna, imagine you wanna put down as few strokes as possible, as few colors and values as possible, but still make it show what it is. So you're kind of limiting yourself in a way, which doesn't make the job much easier. Like stylized is not all about giving it flat textures and adding a few gradients with a curvature map on it. Or it's just that stylized can be so many different things. It's just certain things I think keep getting repeated when it comes to the stylized art. With something hand painted, like here, imagine your choices for style is as many as there are painting styles. So of course here I'm just using the most boring brush in the world, or the hard round one, but you get choices, you get options of any brush you can use. Do you add textures? Do you play more with how soft or hard the edges are? It's it's endless. Like the way I usually start with things is I really, at least for personal stuff, which I guess you could consider this one of those, I would kind of just pick around the brushes I have and choose one. I don't have a go-to in any way. Like I literally adjusted this hard round brush for this specific one, because it's not like I have, that's my meat brush, or something like that. That doesn't exist for me. Each time I might start a piece with a different set of tools. And that's what brings me joy, just trying out different things. I don't think I could just stick to one style, one set of brushes, one something, for everything. I want to try out different stuff, and that's where I find my place to be. Looking back at this, I would almost be tempted to stop the painting much earlier, and then you spent maybe not even half an hour up to this point to get a nice painterly looking pork cube done, and that'd be fine. But let's keep on trucking here. I'm finding, after looking at the reference, that my top bit is getting a bit too contrasty, so I'm just going to take a big brush, do some color sampling, and kind of go over the whole thing just to bring it back together into the same tonal range. a little bit more. Yeah, so you see that, I mean, that texture that I set up before isn't doing too much. But it does create that noise, which is still nice. I don't want this to be flat. Now, while we're painting, that still doesn't mean that we should stop using anything that Substance Painter has to offer. So I noticed you see these kind of darker lines, and while I could paint them, I'm going to try and get a bit of a definition with a mask. So fill layer, black mask, I'll add another fill in the mask, and then if I find, at first I look for stripes or lines, but I remembered anisotropic noise is going to be just nice for that, with a bit of adjustments, of course. See, it already fills up in the right way. If not, you could always, rotate, offset, or whatever. That is doing okay. So I'm just going to expand some settings, adjust how many of these I want, the blurriness, and in the end I'm going to get, again, a nice base to work on with the paint. So it's a bit too precise right now, so go back to the good old blur slope, and I'm going to use noise this time, Perlin noise. So yeah, you have to change here to custom noise, otherwise it's still going to be using the default one. You see, it's again a whole different result because that blurriness is coming from a different source. It's getting somewhere, so let's keep adjusting a little bit. Now, I used Painter before I started using Substance Designer, and I have to say that using Substance Designer and all the notes there really helped me understand a bit more of what Painter is capable of as well. Just, building up these masks with all the different nodes. Now, that's not a requirement, of course, to learn it, but I don't know, somehow for my brain it worked better. So in this case, I know that having the anisotropic noise, I know I can adjust it and put it in a way to kind of get the result I want with, adding different filters and blurs and everything on top. You see already I'm starting to get a much nicer definition. So just a few more settings. So I think it's about being familiar with the node themselves. So what does the Perlin noise have in it and what the adjustments are going to do. So you should really explore and look through them, see what's available there, to kind of familiarize yourself with it, and it's going to make certain situations much easier. So yeah, just with the mask done, again, I wasn't changing the settings before because I needed to see it clearly. Now with it done, I can change it to multiply, adjust the color a little bit, and you see we have a pretty nice result. Again, you could have painted it, but why bother? And I like that this also gives you a procedural result, more random. Sometimes when you paint things manually without even knowing it, you might be repeating a pattern or make it too kind of mechanical, and one can tell that it's been done by hand, in a bad way in this case. But having it as a sort of noise thing, it's nice. Yeah, here I'm just adding a paint on top to kind of get rid of where I don't want the mask to be, of course, which is all the white bits. At this point, you should be familiar with just, you can add and take away from the mask. That's pretty much all we've been doing. I find this such an interesting process. It's, the very old school of just literally painting textures, but you have all the added benefits of, today's technology. I'm starting to notice a few things that the mirroring messed up, so that's something to be cleaned up. Just looking all around, we're coming to a close of just the rough painting block in, and we'll be moving on to adding a few more details.